All right. Good day, class, and Happy New Year to you all. Today, in our social studies for GS1, we'll be looking at the topic, the secondary group. Secondary group. Well, before you went on vacation, we have discussed about the social environment. And of course, in the course of our discussion, we made you to know that when we talk of social environment refers to the culture, the group of people that an individual interact with. So we told you that social environment refers to the culture, the group of people that an individual interact with. And then we made you to know that social environment has to do with, we have two types of social groups. And then we talk about the primary social group and then the secondary social group. Two types of social group that we discussed about before you went on holiday. Primary social group and the secondary social group, or primary group and secondary group, whichever way you call it. And then we talk extensively about primary group. Now we say primary group consists of, people that have close relationship over a long period of time. Primary group consists of people that have close relationship over a long period of time. And we gave an example. A good example is the family. The family is a good example. We talk about family, we talk about the age group and kinship group and so on and so forth. The family, and we discussed extensively about family before you went on holiday. So we talk about the characteristics of primary social group. I want to believe you can still remember. All right. You remember we said part of the characteristics of primary social group is that there is face-to-face interaction. Right. And then we also talk about the fact that it has small size. Then we also talk about the fact that members of primary social group are emotionally committed to one another. We have talked about this before you went on holiday. But today we want to look at the secondary group. The secondary group. Now, when we talk of secondary group, what are we talking about? Secondary group, right, is a formal organization whose members are not closely related, or whose members are not related to one another, but come together to achieve a common goal. I come again. Secondary group is a formal organization whose members are not related to one another, but they come together to achieve a common goal. A good example of secondary group is the school. The school, then you can talk about trade union, you can talk about voluntary organizations like a Red Cross, Boys Brigade, Manowar, and so on and so forth. These are examples of secondary group. So when we talk of secondary group, a secondary group is a formal organization whose members are not related to one another, but come together to achieve a common goal. Now, what are the characteristics of secondary group from what you were taught about primary group? Let us look at the characteristics of secondary group. Number one characteristics of secondary group, like you have in the definition, is that members are not closely related. Members of secondary group are not closely related. Number two, secondary group has a large size. It has a large size, and so membership is large in secondary group. Membership is large. Then members are not closely related. Number three, secondary group membership is permanent. In secondary group, membership is permanent. But I need to also let you know that though membership is permanent here, but it's not as permanent as what you have in primary group. All right. For instance, let us look at the school, for instance. All of you in the school now, you will be there for a period of 6 years. After 6 years, you interact with each other. And after 6 years, you go your different ways. If you don't have anything to do in that school, you may not come back again if you have collected all your certificate and everything you need. So, but membership is permanent. That's one of the characteristics. Membership is permanent, only that it's not as permanent as what we have in the primary group. Then members operate within strict rules and regulations. Members of secondary group operate or interact within strict rules or lay down rules and regulations. So they operate within lay down rules and regulations. They operate strictly within lay down rules and regulations, meaning that there are rules and regulations guiding the operations of members in that group. So members operate, within lay down rules and regulations. Now, all these are the characteristics of a secondary group, and also members of secondary group also they come from different background, different ethnic group, different families, and so on and so forth. So these are the characteristics of a secondary group that we need to talk about. I think they are easy for you to learn. So number one, I said that secondary group has a large size, meaning that membership is large in secondary group. The membership is permanent. Members in secondary group operate or interact strictly within laid down rules and regulations. And then I also said that members of secondary group, are from different tribe, different ethnic group, different background, or different families. So, and we also said that members of secondary group are not related. They are not closely related to one another. So they come together to achieve a common goal. So all these are the characteristics of secondary group. Now, having talked about that, let us quickly look at the differences between primary group and secondary group. Now, what are the differences between primary group and secondary group? Now, let us take it from membership. Number one, primary group has a small size. So, small size. Primary group has a small size, meaning that membership is small in primary group. But secondary group has a large size, meaning that it has large membership. For instance, you cannot compare, family is a good example of primary group. You cannot compare the number of people in a family with the number of people in your class, not to now talk of the entire school. So primary group has a small size, while secondary group has a large size. Or in other words, primary group, the membership is small in primary group, while the secondary group has large membership. Number two, membership in primary group is permanent. Membership is permanent in primary group. But in secondary group, right, membership is less permanent. Right? It's not as permanent as what we have in primary group. So membership is permanent in primary group, but in secondary group, membership is less permanent. That is one. Then another characteristic, another difference that you will see between primary and secondary group is that in primary group, biological relationship exists among members, meaning that members are biological related. So biological relationship exists in primary group. That means that members are biological related, right, or biologically related. Now, but in secondary group, right, they are really related. Members are really related. Members come from different background, different family, different ethnic group. So they are not related biologically, right? So that's another difference that you will see in, between primary and the secondary group. Then the fourth one is that in primary group, the relationship is informal. The relationship is informal, meaning that there's friendly relationship, right? So the relationship is informal. But in secondary group, the relationship is formal. And that is why we told you that they operate within laid down rules and regulations. So in secondary group, the relationship in secondary group is formal, while the relationship in primary group is informal. So all these are the differences that you will see between primary group and secondary group. Number one, I said primary group has a small size, while secondary group has a large size, meaning that there is small membership in primary group, while in secondary group, membership is large. And then in primary group, biological relationship exists among members, while in secondary group, members, excuse me, members have different background, so they are really related. And then in primary group, there is permanent membership, while in secondary group, membership is less permanent. And number four, the relationship in primary group is informal, while the relationship in secondary group is formal. And that is why we said they operate within laid down rules and regulations. So that is why we are going to stop today, and we'll continue from there another time. So I want you to go through the notes and understand everything that you have there. All right. So when next we meet, we'll talk more about secondary group. So, but for today, we are going to stop it there. So till we meet again, God be with you.